Okay, we need Cass again. Because they're going back to the 1200s. Like, why did you put away your velvet? You should have just left it out. But, all right, fine, just get it back on. All right, we're there again. There will not be any cat butts this time. Sorry. We are going to talk about Dame Alice Kyteler, aka, as I said, the Kilkenny Witch. And hopefully I will not start doing a really bad Irish accent during this story. Anyhow, so Kilkenny is a municipal district because it can't be a city, because historically in the UK only the crown could designate something as a city. So there are cities in the UK that only have like a couple thousand people in them because the crown said they're a city. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
It's weird. So it is in the southeast of Ireland, and in the 13th century, it was a thriving merchant town, even if the land had been rocked by the recent Scottish invasion. I am not going to attempt to understand or explain the politics of Ireland at this time because they had stopped having like their high kings, but now they were part of England, but they weren't part of England. It's very confusing. And we're going to talk about politics a little bit, but not in that way. So we just know Ireland, 13th century. The town is bookmarked by two large buildings. One is the Kilkenny Castle Fortress, and the other is St. Canice's. I don't know if that's right, but whatever. Cathedral. And that is the seat of the Bishop of Ossory. So Alice Kyteler was a member of the Kyteler family, go figure, who were wealthy Flemish merchants who had migrated to Kilkenny sometime in the 13th century. And Alice was born there sometime during that century as well. And she turned her large house into an inn. And within this inn, she employed ladies to help her run it and help entertain the wealthy gentlemen of Kilkenny. I do not understand how far that entertainment went. However, the wealthy men of Kilkenny
could have been like Hooters level, could have been like Madame Lou's level.
We just I don't know. But the wealthy men like to go there, which also helped her meet husbands and also make connections with people in the town. So she's a well-off lady to begin with because she comes from this family of merchants, right? She's got her business and she marries William Outlaw. What a great name, right? Outlaw. Yeah. But Outlaw actually wasn't an outlaw. He was also a wealthy merchant. And so they get married in the 1280s. And sadly, he dies. And we don't know how. However, when he dies, Alice does receive a third of his estate as a widow. And she also has that merchant money from her family and the inn. So she's doing pretty okay. She and William had a son together. His name was also William, and he also does well for himself. Basically becomes Alice's business partner. They are very tight for mother and son, and he goes and basically takes over the dad's business, and he starts making political connections just like his mom does. So they become really tight with the royal administration. And like I said, the politics is slightly confusing, but there is a royal administration that's just Ireland, right? And William is doing so well, he even becomes the mayor of Kilkenny, right? So, but Alice is maybe lonely, horny, we don't know. She decides to get married again. And she marries Adam Leblund of Callan. And he also had cash. He and Alice, however, were accused of murdering her first husband, and she does get slightly accused of witchcraft, but it's just like a little witchcraft accusation. Just a little, you're a witch. You're a little witch. But that doesn't go anywhere. And in 1307, Adam does something called quit claiming to William, which I learned is some legal term that still exists. And it basically means that you're forgoing any debt between you and that person, and I'm going to give you shit. So, like, not actual shit, but like, my land and stuff. So, Adam dies. And we don't know how he dies, but the theory is that he died from drinking too much because he had a problem. But Alice, not a lady to be let down, rallies and she marries again. And she marries
an optimist and a romantic.
looking for love. You gotta have that special someone in your life. So she marries Richard de Valley in 1309, and she don't want no scrubs. He's also rich and from a prominent family. But he dies too.
Oh no.
So this is the third husband that's died. And then his
People
son
start getting suspicious at this point.
Particularly the kids of the people she's marrying who are getting cut out of some of their inheritance of wills. And the money is going to Alice and William, but also like they're kind of dicks. Like, so Richard's son doesn't want to give Alice her widowship right, so she's entitled to a third of her husband's estate, which is just shitty. Like, oh, she only gets a third? Like, I'm sure like half of that shit was probably Alice's money, right? She was already a wealthy merchant. Right. So maybe she wanted more money, which is fine, girl. You know, have your money, but get an upgrade, right? But at the same time, like, what you doing, girl? What's going on here? Why are these men dying? So she sues him and she does get her rightful share of that money, but that doesn't leave good feelings between them. And while Kilkenny is a prosperous town, it's still not that large, especially amongst these, you know, the wealthy. But also, Alice just can't be alone. Oh, no. She's a serial monogamist, and she marries again. And she marries for the fourth time to Sir John Le Poor, who was not poor. He was a sir. And he starts to get sick. And
that's weird.
When he's getting sick, his children also at that time learn that they have been cut out of their inheritance. And that is going to William and Alice. So,
and she's, I say, player game strong.
She's making bank.
Dang.
And apparently, you know, likely an attractive woman because she keeps, you know, snagging men. I mean, sure, her money didn't hurt, but
yeah, I mean,
but
they're all dying. Haven't they seen the trend here? Like the odds of getting her money are pretty slim.
But they must think she's worth it, right? So when John starts to get sick and the kids realize that they're losing their money, they get together with the kids of her previous husbands and they start chatting.
Smart.
And they're like, hey, something's up over here. And they're like, hey, you know what we should do? We should go to the bishop.
This bitch sketch. That's what they said.
That's what they said. They said she's sketch. And also we want our money is probably more of what the motivations
bitch better have my money.
Bitch better have my money. So the kids decide to take their suspicions to the bishop, Richard de Ledrede, Ledrede, and that means Leatherhead. So we're going to call him Dick Leatherhead. So like Dickhead, but with a leather in it. So Dick Leatherhead, because he's a bishop. And guess what? Bishop in the 13th century kind of sucked. Shocking. So he was also not a local. He was not a charming Irish lad. No. He was English. He was appointed bishop to the Bishop of Ossory in 1317 by Pope John the 22nd, who was terrified that witches were going to kill him. So the pope that he comes from already was fucking afraid of witches. Yeah. And before that, we don't really know a ton about him besides the fact that he was from England and that he worked his way up through the Franciscan order. Likely he came from not a poor family, but not like a wealthy family, right? And we do know that he had been in Avignon during the Templar trials when they were burned for heresy. And that is a strong oversimplification of what happened to the Templars in France. There's a lot of shit on that. Go watch Dan Brown or something, whatever. So, but he really got into this. He was like, yeah, you're burning people because they're heretics. Like it. So when he gets
that's my jam.
It's my jam. I'm into this. Like, yeah, let's do this for Jesus. So he comes to town and he tells anybody, hey, if you know of any heretics,
Tell
you
me.
gotta, can you let me know? But you have to let me know in a month. It wasn't really, he didn't ask. He was very adamant. You need
Very
to tell
strict
me
timeline.
where they are, and you have a month. I also don't understand why the month. Like, let's give them some time to think about it. But
Well, but if you know, you know.
right, you should. But maybe you have a conscience, and that's why it takes you a while. Whatever. So he gets to town, and he does that, and then he also thinks that everyone, because he's a zealot, right?
Well, yeah.
He wants everyone to be super pious, and certainly doesn't want them to singing bawdy songs. Oh no. So,
how dare you have fun in a tavern?
right? Especially if you're of the church. So, just to make sure, he wrote a book of hymns for, this is the quote, for this is what he wrote: for the vicars of the cathedral church, for the priests and for his clerks, to be sung on important holidays and at celebrations, in order that their throats and mouths consecrated to God may not be polluted by songs which are lewd, secular, and associated with revelry. And since they are trained singers, let them provide themselves with suitable tunes according to what these sets of words require.
Huh. He's fun at parties.
Yep, and also probably fits really great in with Ireland. They don't like to get drunk and sing at all.
No, not at all. It's not anything they're into in the slightest.
Never. So, when he gets brought these accusations against Alice, he's stoked. Like, yes, I knew it. There's heretical sorceresses in Kilkenny. And I do love that they don't really call her a witch. They call her a sorceress. And that's
pretty
so
badass.
much better. Like, fuck yeah. Like, oh, we need to bring that
I knew
back.
she was a baller, so I mean,
she's like, no, she's not a common witch. She's not a kitchen witch. She's not a plants witch. She's a sorceress. So he's very excited, and so they get together, they talk, and like, well, it's not just Alice, because we said before, nobody worships Satan alone. She's got to have friends. So they end up accusing 10 people besides her, including her son William.
I'll say he's got to be in the mix.
Her son William is there, and then also her poor maid. Just did not want to be a maid to somebody in the 13th century. It does not end well for you.
No, never.
And that may be a spoiler to the story, but it does not. So she gets, and not only is she accused, but also her daughter is. So like her and her fucking daughter are now like in
rude.
Like this web of, clearly they're part of her coven, right?
Yeah, obviously.
And they get 7 charges. First, they're charged with the fact that they denied the Christian faith for a time, for a year or a month. Again, it's or a month. So, and
if you just had like a rough month of like bad faith, then like, nope, fuck you.
Yep. So they stopped believing in the doctrines of Christ. They did not adore the body of Christ. I mean, those abs were pretty ripped. Nor did they enter a sacred building or take communion or use holy water. So I'm not sure if they just stopped going to church and because they had shit to do, or if they were at church.
They were too busy cleaning this bitch's house.
Right? I was like, oh God, do you see how the people in this inn? God, they're so messy. Their second charge was that they sacrificed animals to the demon Robin, son of Art, or Robert Artisan, or Filius Artis, which is the bastard son of Artis. So, according to the Dictionary of Demons, Artis was a great duke of hell. He appears wearing 2 crowns. Fuck yeah, you rock that. You get 2 crowns. Yeah. Why 1 crown when you can wear 2, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
And he has a sword. He's
got all the accoutrements.
His accessories are bitchin'. Then he likes to teach, and he will answer any questions you ask. He grants love and grace to all persons, and has 36 legions of lesser spirits to serve him. Artis sounds like an awesome demon. I want to be friends with Artis.
I'm like this. They're not like selling this as being a negative.
No, he does not sound bad. But they're not actually hanging out with Artis. They're hanging out with his son, either Robert or Robin, depending on which translation you were going with. So, number third chart is they hung out with demons because, clearly. Number 4, they would meet nightly and would knowingly mock the power of the church by doing things like just being blasphemous. How dare you?
Yeah, by existing.
So number 5, they did make a concoction in the skull of a decapitated thief. And their recipe was entrails of cocks sacrificed to demons, herbs, worms, and they had to be horrible worms. They're very specific that it was horrible
Not
worms.
Good worms.
Not the good worms. So earthworms, no. What's a bad worm?
Horrible worms.
Horrible. That the worms that don't pay their taxes. Something, just really bad worms. And then they also had dead men's nails, clothes of boys who had died before baptizing, and butt hair.
Huh.
So they would use this concoction inside the skull. And so I can barely keep things in a bowl when I'm mixing it, or like I always am like getting the wrong pot on the stove, or like when I'm making something, and I never judge the volume correctly. And I don't feel like a skull has that much room, even if you hollow it out. I mean, even
the
in
eye sockets, you've got a lot of like openings around the ear holes and shit.
And cock entrails seem like they'd be pretty big, right? Maybe like the horrible worms are really tiny.
Yeah, maybe like mealworms. I don't know.
So their sixth charge was that that was specifically to Alice, and that was she bewitched her husbands to give money to her son, and then she murdered them. And the final charge against them, number 7, was again directly against Alice, and that was that Alice and the demon Robin, son of Art, were lovers, and that is why she was wealthy, because she was fucking a demon. And so Robin would come to her either as a cat, a shaggy dog, or an Ethiopian. That is the Middle Ages racism, not mine, but they often would associate demons with black men because they sucked. So, but Robin also was not alone. He would bring 2 friends with him. That's nice. These demons were actually taller than Robin. I don't know why they had to say that, but just so you know, they were taller than Robin.
Noted.
But maybe Robin was really short.
Maybe.
And one of them also carried an iron rod for something.
Okay.
In addition to these 7 charges, Alice was also accused of sweeping the streets at night towards William's house and chanting, "To the house of William, my son, high all the wealth of Kilkenny town." So she was sweeping the streets. Doing a spell. But also public service. Right? I'm assuming the streets.
Can't you get like community service hours for that?
Right. 13th century, early 14th century. I'm guessing those streets were disgusting.
Yeah.
Like covered in shit and just like everything. So everywhere. Dick Leatherhead, once he hears this, he writes to the Chancellor of Ireland. He says, we must arrest them. But the Chancellor of Ireland was Roger Outlaw. Remember her first husband, William Outlaw? So he's her son's uncle. Okay. We're pretty sure. We think they were brothers, but they were a close family, and he's like, no.
Pass.
And then he basically makes the excuse of, well, you have to be excommunicated for 40 days before you can become arrested. And Dick Leatherhead is like, no, you know what? Fuck you. I'm going to do it myself. Alice, you're summoned.
Boiled.
And she goes, peace, motherfuckers. And she eats out of town. Because she is a smart woman and she just fucking leaves. So she either goes to England or Dublin. We do know she makes her way to Dublin in a minute. But right now, one of the 2. But the other 10 people are still in town, including William. And so William kind of becomes the brunt of what Leatherhead has to do now, right? Because there's all bets there. And so William decides, you know what, I probably need some friends. This is looking kind of bad for me. So he starts gathering some supporters. including Sir Arnold Lepore,
Uh-oh.
who is also related to the fourth husband who died, but apparently really dug them. So they probably weren't that bad of people, because Arnold was like, "Nah, I got your back." And Arnold is the Seneschal, and I'm gonna butcher that word for all of this, of Kilkenny, which is pretty much like the town like administrator. It's a high
Okay.
position during this time.
Yeah.
And he also likely thought that Dick was challenging his authority with this, because he is like, the courts, the secular courts.
Yeah.
And then you have this religious court
Religious
saying
court,
that
like up in your shiz in your town.
Dick charges William with heresy and with harboring heretics. Arnold tries to persuade him that this is stupid, and Dick does not listen. So Arnold has him arrested. That seems like a reasonable solution. So,
Sure.
oddly enough, Arnold is in jail until past the day of when William was supposed to go to court. So he's there for 17 days. And oh boy, is he a fucking martyr. And he's a little bitch, and he throws a tantrum, and he puts the entire diocese under interdict, which basically means he takes away church. He's like, no,
How fun.
you can't have Jesus anymore. You won't have any sacraments. You won't get baptized. You won't get married. If you die, that's too fucking bad. You can't get buried in the church's consecrated grounds. And while that seems a little silly, maybe in this day and age, at that time, where you really thought if these things did not happen, you burn for eternity in hell.
Yeah, it's very upsetting.
It's upsetting and terrifying. So it's really a big deal that he does this. But he's also such a fucking tool. He goes and he gets a communion wafer, and he takes the host in with him into jail, and he's like, Christ is in prison too.
Doesn't sound very Christ-like of him.
So eventually he is released. Like I said, he's there for 17 days. And Arnold and everybody is like, hey, can you just kind of, let's make this, we'll take you out through the back. It won't be a big deal. And he's like, oh, no, bring forth my vestment. So he gets his bishop costume on, and he gets all his like clergy friends and shit. And they have a parade from the jail to the church. And then when he gets to the church, he's like, turns around. He's like, William, you will appear before me tomorrow. Nah.
Huh.
So while William is supposed to do that, Arnold, and likely probably Alice as well, have been doing some political maneuvering in the back end. And Dick is summoned to the Parliament in Dublin to answer for the interdict, because they're like, hey.
You can't do that to people. Dick summoned.
He was Dick summoned. He was. So, because this town is still under no church. And so he does not show up.
Don't take people's faith away. That's just rude.
You're just being a dick. Right. So Dick refuses to go because he says to get to Dublin, he has to go through Arnold's lands, and he thinks that Arnold is going to kill him. Probably not wrong. Because Arnold, when he was running for his position, murdered his opponent so he could get the job. So, probably a justifiable fear.
There's some bad motherfuckers.
Yeah, they're kind of awesome.
I mean, like, I'm scared and I don't want any of these things to happen at all, but I'm just saying they're kind of cool here about
shit's happening back here, right? So they go back, and we're back in Kilkenny, and so Arnold is sorry. So even though he's afraid to go, he sends a proctor in his place to go answer for this. And basically his boss, the archbishop, says, stop being a tool, uplift this interdict, you're an idiot. And
don't stop punishing all these people. Let them go to fucking church, dickwad.
Right. But he also is like, Arnold, you need to apologize. You need to apologize to Dickhead. Which is really something he doesn't want to do, but he does. And he ends up like giving him the kiss of peace, which I just imagine that scene. I'm just Peace with you.
Fine.
But so after that, Arnold is like, fuck this. We're taking this bishop to court, right? So he brings up a court, does not invite Dick to come, but Dick shows up anyways. And
there's jokes here and I don't even have them. Like, I don't even know where to go. Oh, Dick shows up anyways.
Dick always shows up when you least expect it. So Arnold is like, no, man, I want this man thrown out of my court. And he starts hurling such classic insults like, you're an ignorant, low-born vagabond from England.
Because that's the big insult. There we go.
It actually is. You're fucking English. All right. And then he also calls him a vile, rustic, interloping monk with dirty hands.
Sounds about right.
Which is also, Arnold, you're an elitist, right? He's like, you're poor and your hands are dirty and you're from England.
But, I mean.
Yeah. So, but Dick is like, no, I'm going to get into this court. So once again, he holds up the communion wafer of the host. And he's using this as a shield. So nobody would hurt him. Because if you hurt him while he was holding this, you would also, the body of Christ. You were hurting Jesus. Yeah. Dick!
Yeah, that's rude.
It's fun. It's just, what an asshole. All right. So he also wants to read aloud the decree that says that the secular courts have to hand over heretics to the church for trial. And he does offer to read it. So he's also throwing shade. He offers to read it to...
Would you like me to read it for you?
He's like, look, I mean, you're a knight, so you can probably read a little, but I don't want you to say that you didn't understand it because you couldn't read it. So I'll read it out loud for you. Do you want that? So they're just like bitch fighting back and forth. And so he goes out. And so at this time, Alice is in Dublin and she decides that she's going to do a counter mover. And she sues the bishop for excommunicating for her for no reason. And at this time, they summon him and he actually does come to Dublin. And so do Arnold and William. And Arnold starts arguing that the church shouldn't have this type of power in Ireland without basically the king's seal. That we shouldn't have to follow this law that the Pope says until we determine as a country, or at least our royalty or our monarchy, whatever says that we're doing this, right? And he says this very kind of poetic thing that's like, it was, I don't know, poetic, but kind of slamming. And he says, as you well know, heretics have never been found in Ireland, which has always been called the Island of Saints. Now this foreigner comes from England and says we are all heretics and excommunicates. Defamation of his country affects every one of us, so we must all unite against this man. So he's throwing his nationalism there and being like, look, if we cow to this guy, we're cowing to the church, and you're taking away our rights as Irishmen.
Yeah.
Nobody listened. Because he had this time, while there were people there who were on Arnold and Alice's and William's side, there were also a bunch of bishops there. So they all decide, no, this is your right. Go ahead and accuse Alice and the rest of them. And Alice is like, bye! And
bye. Eat again.
She's just like, I'm getting on a boat. So she gets on a boat and goes away. But back in, again, leaving everybody behind in Kilkenny.
Yeah, I'm like, this is not nice of her.
Yep. So all those people are arrested. And they do confess and say, yes, Dame Alice is our mistress of evil. She is our mistress. And William does appear before the bishop. He also brings a bunch of friends with him who are all like fucking armed. And they all just kind of stand around like while the bishop is accusing him. And I'm like, what you gonna do, man? What you gonna do?
Like subtle threats.
Subtle threats, which I enjoy quite a lot. And he gets accused of 34 different crimes, but really it's, heresy and being a sorcerer, blah, blah, blah. He has to wait for the justiciary to come to town, which the justiciary, for what I understand, is kind of like the prime minister, head judge. Like, so while like I said, the politics this time are very confusing. while Ireland was a part of England, they had their own, like, the person who was like making like the decisions, right?
Okay.
Like their high, like their president, but kind of, I guess.
Not, yeah.
It's confusing, but it's basically high up important people.
Right. But appointed, not elected.
I believe. Appointed. Probably. I don't think they had elections. So
No.
likely appointed. So these officials do arrive in Kilkenny, many of them actually staying with William. And Dick knows, though, that this is his moment, right? He's like, yeah, stage. I'm going to read all these charges against Alice, and I'm going to declare her to be a sorceress and a heretic. She should be handed over by whoever has her, and we should get all her goods. Alice.
Oh, convenient.
How convenient. They just want to take her stuff. So Alice is not handed over because no one knows where Alice is. And if they do, they ain't telling.
They ain't talking.
Nope. But they do take her stuff, including her inn. So
fucking civil asset forfeiture is bullshit.
Yep. That was a thing even then, and it's a thing now, and it's fucking bullshit. So William does confess to his crimes, and he is imprisoned in Kilkenny Castle until the bishop changes his punishment to you have to perform penance. So the penance he is given is you need to hear 3 masses every day for a year, which is also like, you think about the fact that they were giving more than that. There's that many masses a day in your small town. That's a lot of your day. Like 3 times a day. That's a fucking lot. You also have to give food to the poor. And you have to pay for part of the lead roof for our cathedral. So that is what he's told to do.
Okay.
Then he doesn't do it. Because why would you? And he gets put back in prison. And then, now that Alice is gone.
I mean, how are you going to make money to pay for the lead roof if you're in fucking mass all day?
Right. So the bishop is like, well, now that William is in prison and Alice is gone, who do I have left to torture and talk to? Oh, let's start with all these other people I arrested.
Yeah. So
he demands that Petronilla, the maid, be flogged 6 times. Which was not, basically violated many of the practices of the time. Like, you're not supposed to do that. You're never supposed to flog anybody, much less 6 times, which is pretty awful. And somehow, after she was flogged that many times, she confessed a lot. She said, weird. Yeah, weird. After somebody like beat the shit out of her, she said, like, why, yes.
Almost to death. Yeah, yes. You'll say a lot of things.
Yeah. Yes, I did deny my faith, and I sacrificed to Robert. Yes.
Yeah, totally.
Totally, I did that. Sometimes.
Are you going to stop trying to kill me now? That'd be great.
Yes. Well, what else do you want to know? Oh, okay. Yes, sometimes I made women of my acquaintance look like they had goat's horns.
Huh.
Which that is a damn fine use of your power.
Body mod 1300 style.
Boom. Oh, haha, that bitch has horns. Ha. And she also confessed to, yes, I did consult demons, and I was a go-between for Alice and Robert. Why, yes, I was a mistress of the black arts, but nothing compared to Alice. Alice taught me everything. Oh, why, also, yes, William is a sorcerer, and he wore the devil's girdle for a whole year. So the devil's girdle, apparently there are many magical girdles, which are basically belts, right? And they appear to have been the origin of the magnetic belts that people sometimes wear today. But apparently, yeah, if you like Satan, you wore a belt underneath your shit, I guess, or maybe in the outside. I don't know, but you had a girdle on. And also, yes, there were wafers of sacramental bread with a devil on it in Alice's house. And also, she had ointments, and she put it on a staff. And then she got on that staff, and she ambled and galloped around.
Huh. Wait,
she lubed up a stick and rode it. She did.
Yeah. So you can have goat horns, have a satanic girdle that makes you look skinny, and then ride around on a greased up stick.
I didn't say it made you look skinny, but I like that you went there. You're just like,
your girdle. You said girdle. That's like a fitted thing. I'm like, this just sounds like
a belt, but yes.
It just sounds like a night at a goth club.
Goat horns, corset, riding a lubed up stick. All right, so she confesses to all these things, and then she's burned at the stake on November 3rd.
So that didn't work out well for her, did it?
It did not. And she was the first person accused of heresy to be burned in Ireland. So really, she was the first witch, the first woman accused of being a witch to be burned. This is also the first time where we really start seeing women's sexuality being brought in as part of it, like the fact that, oh, you're clearly fucking demons, and that as we know will become a very big part of witchcraft accusations for the next millennium, practically, right? But her being burned at the stake did light a fire under William, you could say.
I see what you did there.
I did. And so he begs the bishop to come to his prison, and he just throws himself in the mud and begs. And Dick says, okay, fine, but we need more penance, right? You can't just have what you need to do more. So you need to get on the first boat that comes around and go to the Holy Land. You need to make a pilgrimage. You need to pay for more of the lead in our roof. And we also think you need a cosigner, because we don't believe you're going to do this. So Roger actually, I'm just calling him the cosigner, or is like someone who's paying your bail, basically saying, I will be responsible for William doing this penance. If William does not do this, I will do this in his stead. Right?
Oh, that sucks.
But good uncle. Good on him, right? So that is what happens. We think William does that stuff. I don't really know what happens to William. But what about the other accused? And we also don't really know what happened to the rest of the other 8 people, right? I did read somewhere that damn it, the fuck was her name? Her name is not easy to remember. The poor maid. The poor Petronilla. It's a lovely name, but it's very hard to remember. Petra, we'll just call her that. That's easier. So there was a rumor that her daughter actually was with Alice when she fled. I don't know if that's true, but that would be awesome if she took her. So I'm just gonna fingers crossed that's what happened to her. There was a monk at the time who said, with regard to the other heretics and sorcerers who belong to the pestilential society of Robin, son of Art, the order of law being preserved, some of them were publicly burnt to death. Others, confessing their crimes in the presence of all the people in an upper garment, are marked back and front with a cross after they abjured the heresy, as is the custom. Others were solemnly whipped through the town and the marketplace. Others were banished from the city and diocese. Others who evaded the jurisdiction of the church were excommunicated, while others again fled in fear and were never heard of after. And thus, by the authority of Holy Mother Church and by the special grace of God, that most foul brood was scattered and destroyed. I just love the fact they always include son of Art. Robin. Yeah. Son of Art.
Son of Art.
He can't just be, maybe there were multiple Robins, and we had to be very clear about which Robin this was, Yeah. So, of course, Dick doesn't stop, and he keeps accusing people, and inevitably accuses Arnold of heresy, and unfortunately, Arnold dies awaiting trial at Dublin Castle. I hope he haunts it. So, eventually, though, Ireland does get sick of Dick's shit, and they just toss him out. They toss him out of the country, and also in a fun state of karma is a bitch. He gets accused of heresy. Ha!
That's funny.
Ha!
That's funny.
Suck it. So that happens to him. He ends up kind of going in and out of favor with the courts of France, but ends up basically dying without his shit. All his stuff is confiscated, and he dies out of favor of the church. So, bomb. Also, in 1332, the lead tower of the cathedral collapsed because lead. Oddly, you shouldn't put...
I don't know. I assumed that they just were using a lot of lead in a lot of church roofs, so I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, I don't fucking know what they were using to make that shit. So
no, lead's heavy then, like it is now. Well, I mean, and if you put a bunch of it in a roof, it's gonna... Yeah. Also, probably just not great in general to have that much lead around you. But
what?
But Alice was never heard from again. she just disappeared. And I hope she lived a bitching life and just had like the best fucking time riding her greased up stick. And you can still go visit the Kyteler Inn. It's in Kilkenny. Their menu looks dope, and they have a very interesting video promoting it. I recommend, and we will drop the link in the show notes, of course, but highly recommend you go watch this very lengthy, interesting video about the Kyteler Inn. And of course, I made Diana watch it. Thank you, Diana, for it was something.
It was something.
Yep. And of course, it is haunted. They think most likely by Petronilla. It is believed that Alice haunts the staircase at the cathedral, which I also would love if like the bishop is haunting it too, and she's just like fucking with him throughout eternity. That would be great. In 2004, Patty Shaw, an American artist, painted a portrait of Alice with a representation of the demon Aethiops. He eventually sent that to the inn with a note that said, "Alice doesn't like being with me. You have her."
Huh.
So I'm not sure what Alice in the portrait was doing to him. And she's honestly, the portrait, man, she looks kind of unhappy. So I can see why she was probably pissed off at you. And also the fact that you put that demon in there with her and not a cat. You should have put a cat. All right. And finally, we're going to end with a bit of a poem because it's Ireland. We do, all the Irish, we do love our poets. And so this is an excerpt from William Butler Yeats, 1919. "But now when drops, dust settles, thereupon there lurches past his great eyes without thought, upon the shadow of stupid straw pale locks, that insolent fiend, Robert Artisan, to whom the lovelorn Lady Kyteler brought bronzed peacock feathers, red combs of her cocks."
Huh.
And that is also because in some of the versions, the things that were sacrificed to bring the animals included the red combs of roosters and peacock feathers.
Okay, then.
But that's pretty, I mean, the fact that that was written by Yeats so much further in time is kind of cool, that the legend of her was still something that was being talked about then. And obviously there, like I said, there's a lot of firsts that happen with this story, and also just a pretty much demonstration of how much it sucked to live in the 13th and 14th centuries.